Welcome back to Season 5 of Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. I am your host, Kofi Outlaw, and today is all about two things, D and D. That's right, we are doing Dungeons & Dragons today because it is the release day of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the long-awaited big screen adaptation of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise. And what better way to get into this than sitting down and talking with one of the stars of the film who is joining us today. Thank you for being here, Miss Daisy Head, who plays the film's villain, Sofina. So thank you for joining us today, Daisy. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's just jump into it because I know we only have a limited bout of your time. I'm sure you have a busy day today. Matt,
I do, as it happens.
Yeah, Matt is our. I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce my co-host. I'm sorry. Joining me today, of course, as always, for the last 5 years, is my co-host Matthew Aguilar and Janelle Wheeler.
Hey, everybody. We're really excited to be here. We've sorted out all of our technical difficulties. Life is good.
Yeah, we had days here and I just made a beeline. I was like, all right, interview time. Let's go. I think there are other people here too. Yes. Oh, that's me. Oh, I have something I have not muted. Oh man, this is all starting off so swimmingly. Matt, you are a tabletop expert. Please save me and please take us in to your first question for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves star Daisy Head.
Amazing. So I'm super excited anytime I get to talk tabletop on the show. So I am thrilled, and it's awesome to see the fervor, I really think, around the movie so far. There's so much positive buzz about it. It's really cool to be that. You know, your character, Sofina, kind of relies on a quiet menace, a bit more expressions to do some of the talking for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built that character and, maybe some of the internal narrative you kind of built up for the character when joining the role?
Yeah, so I didn't want her just to, be bad for bad's sake. And I didn't want her just to be the villain. I wanted it to be rooted in a sense of authenticity and a kind of an emotional gravitas to her. So I developed my own kind of backstory and my own narrative. And, she's clearly very driven by her need to achieve and to be also accepted by the society that she inhabits. Having felt a sort of an outcast when she was human and she had a soul, she basically didn't have a lot to lose. And I was like, well, that, makes sense. If I can find a reason to understand the behavior, doesn't mean I have to justify it, but it just allows me to get into her head and all the awful things that she does, sort of understanding why and the root of her anger. And I feel like she's an incredibly loyal persona. And I can very much relate to that because I wanted it to be tethered somehow to me. And that's not always easy when you're playing a villain. But that emotional architecture was really important to me. And I feel like the love that Edkin so clearly has for his family and his willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of achieving their reunion really sort of fans that fire that rages within Sofina for the love that she didn't have and has always been kind of striving, and she kind of feels that she has that with Zastam, and she finally has a leader and a guardian, and so I kind of let that all simmer underneath it, basically.
Well, right, and you make a point. You need a counterbalance to make that conflict land, and for her to have as much the antithesis of his love and passion to get what he had back. You've found that new thing, you don't want to let it go, and so that I love that conflict, and I think that presents itself throughout the movie. And look, Dungeons and Dragons has been around a long time, but it feels as popular as ever, and it continues to grow. What did you find most interesting about the world itself, and is it pretty cool now to say that players can now add your character to their games. I mean, you have stat blocks and everything. Like, that's got to be pretty surreal, right?
It's nuts. Nothing can really prepare you for it. It's wild. I find myself having done a couple of fantasy things now. I love that, these fantastical worlds, they provide such wonderful escapes, but also the sheer scope of imagination that this story and other fantasy worlds encapsulate. It kind of makes it timeless. So our imaginations are completely limitless, and they don't have to be dictated by who we are, what we do, how old we are, which is such a beautifully timeless facet of human existence, that I feel like that's what makes me so excited about this, because there is really no limit and the worlds are so far reaching. And I really love that, we were just talking about the emotionality. What's so great about this, especially, and I think the script that John and Jonathan delivered, was that you really get a sense of the heart of each of the characters, and you really get a sense of what they're striving for. And I feel like that juxtaposition between the emotionality and the heart of these characters against these hugely fantastical landscapes really works for such kind of an epic adventure, because you're not just watching all this heightened stuff without being able to connect. Like, the script really allows you, and this story really allows you to care for the characters and indulge in them, and see that each is so uniquely individual in their own ways, and they all have their own vulnerabilities, which you learn actually become their greatest strengths, and their differences are actually what unite them. And I think that's such a beautiful reflection of the society that we live in, that everyone does have a story and a past, and we're all striving to be on this planet or in this world. And I feel like it's like highlighting people's differences in such a way that Dungeons and Dragons has done is a very beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was so quiet I lost my voice there for a minute. Zaz Tom is a character who is in this movie with you, and is kind of, as you alluded to, was kind of the relationship that Sofina is trying to kind of foster. There's one particularly almost like horror themed scene when you are talking to Tom in this, and he's in the shadows, and you see this. And I was, for a moment, just taken out of the movie, and I was curious. I couldn't help but wonder, were there more scenes of you interacting with Tom? Was that the only one? Or were they something that they kind of had to scale back and just said, oh, these are maybe too scary? I was just curious about that.
No, that was actually the only one. And that was the only one in all of the drafts that I'd read. So I don't know if they ever had more. But no, as far as I was aware, that was a standalone scene. And the only interaction that you saw between them.
And it was such a good scene. So scary. On to fashion, naturally, the next place we go with this line of thinking. When I also watched the film, one thing I couldn't help but also think about was your performance and the costuming for your character. It seemed like this role was one that kind of required you to make like significant physical changes, like possibly shaving your head and applying the kind of the tattoo work of a red wizard, but also required you to kind of have a physicality that would acknowledge some of the digital effects that would go into your costuming, the way it changes, the way it moves. So can you talk about the challenge of that from both ends a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I fortunately didn't have to shave my head. It was a bald cap, but it was an incredible team who created this look. And for me, such a huge part about creating characters is about feeling like I'm in a different skin. And I literally would go into the makeup truck feeling and looking like myself, mind you, at 4 a.m., maybe less myself than normal. But it was such a journey to literally step out sort of, 2.5 to 3 hours later and feel like I was inhabiting my character already before I'd even stepped on set. so it was a huge privilege to literally wear the masterpiece that was Sofina's look. And the same with the costume. Like the minute I was wearing the dress, and especially with the cowl and the hood, I just felt I couldn't not carry myself differently. And it was just so beautiful. I was just, I don't know, I feel truly honored to have been wearing it and able to perform in it. And I mean, we had to make some adjustments because of all her spell casting. We had to put gussets in the armpits so I could actually open my arms without ripping the seam every time. And doing a lot of the wire work. I obviously have these sort of long sleeves which come down from my wrists, and I did find that doing some of the things we did get a bit tangled, so I'm sure there's several bloopers of me with it wrapped around my head and all sorts. But I embrace challenge. I love that. I feel like it's all part of the process, and just learning to adapt, and you figure out how you can move, and it's all part of this jigsaw that creates the magic that you end up seeing on screen. So I love being a part of that process and being like, okay, that's slightly challenging. How are we going to overcome that? But it was great fun.
I've heard some superhero, as a follow-up, I'm sorry, Janelle, the superhero actors say when they have to act and sometimes do things like, make movements to say, oh, my helmet's coming on or something like that, they kind of leave with like a tick from having to do those motions over and over again. Did you leave with any kind of particular ticks from Sofina and having to kind of act out some of this?
I don't think in that respect I did, but I had developed some sort of little like sort of quirky head movements just to create, I don't know, I just wanted there to be a slight unease about her, and just a slight, I've said animalistic before and that's not really the right word, but I just wanted something slightly subhuman about her. And I learnt, other than it did make my eyes water, that I could go for a very long time without blinking. And I've been able to kind of use that, but it hasn't stopped me. Like I don't suddenly forget to blink. Do you know what I mean? But maybe some of that head movement, like it does last in your body. Like the body keeps the score the whole time. So yeah, some of that stuff does stay in the nervous system. So I maybe was slightly jolty with a few movements, but nothing too like outrageous or weird, hopefully.
So all future negotiations are going to go very differently now that you don't need to blink, right?
I'm thinking of like Love at First Sight, or what is it? Like Love is Blind, that dude that like doesn't blink on there.
Oh yeah.
He's catching so much flack. Yeah, he's catching. The girl like doesn't want to be with him because he doesn't blink enough. That's the first thing I thought of. I know, terrible. Basically,
to be fair, that is that would be off-putting.
Yeah. I think he's endearing. He's just a big old nerd.
There is something off-putting about someone who doesn't blink. Like it really unnerved Michelle, and that's what sort of made me go, "Oh, there's power to this. There's actual power." And we tried to have, well, I say we tried to. I was just not blinking, and then I realized at the end of the tape, John was like, "Daisy, blink, blink," because there were just tears streaming down my face, and I actually hadn't realized. I was like, "Okay, yes, Sofina might not blink, but she's not just crying the whole time." But Michelle tried to have a staring contest, and she was like, "Can't do it, can't do it." But it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's slightly unnerving because it's we blink as a multitude of reasons, and there's a softening, and if an animal is fixed on prey and it's not blinking, like it means business. Yeah. So yeah, I don't blame her for not being in love with him because he doesn't.
Well, I guess we'll just go over to me really quickly. This cast is stacked with talent. And so thinking about that, is there a favorite memory or a moment that we don't know about that you have of being on set, or like, what is your favorite experience from being on set?
Honestly, the whole project in terms of memories was, is an embarrassment of riches. I just feel so lucky to have been part of such an epically great ensemble, because truly everyone is so fantastic as people, not just actors in their characters, and everyone did such a great job on this film that to be able to be on set with all of them was just, I had the best time. I think, you know, a scene partner in Hugh Grant, the laughs were not short, and we did. I mean, I had to be obviously very serious and intense, but anytime the camera cut, I was just rolling on the floor, literally laughing. So I have fondest memories of working with Hugh and his ability to just keep everyone alive with his humor. And then I think the finale at the end, when we were actually, it was sort of the first time that we were all doing a scene together. And I really love that, because so much of it, you know, you all go off and you do these little bits and it all ends up being the final picture. But when you get scenes that have everyone involved, there's just a lovely camaraderie on set that you just can't beat. So that was, yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite.
I love to hear about a good environment because you hear about some projects that just were
Totally.
wretched. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't always get to say how much fun and how, you know, much you appreciated spending those hours with those individuals. And I have to say, it's true, I'm not just paying lip service. Like, they're just a really great group of people and talented too.
That's awesome. Matt, are you going to take the next one, or are we running low on time?
No, we
go
definitely
ahead,
got to
jump
get this
into your-
last question in.
Yeah,
Okay.
jump into your next one. You're good.
Okay. All right. Yay, me. All right. You've been a part of so many huge geek franchises now. We have Underworld, we have Sandman, we have Shadow and Bone, now D&D. Do you have a particular franchise or character like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, anything like that that you would just like love to be a part of?
Oh my gosh, very good question. And I probably going to let you down with the answer and say not one specifically. I love to play, and there is something so wonderful about fantasy that really, I think, harnesses my ability to suspend my own disbelief when I'm making it. And it's literally, I feel like going back to my childhood and playing make believe, because that truly is what we're doing. So all and any, like, bring it on. Whatever anyone wants me to be a part of. I have so much fun, and I love, you know, I love that even though these worlds are so heightened, as I said earlier, people can relate and there is an accessibility to them, because there's heart and there's real depth to the characters. And I really love that. So long may I continue to be part of any franchise.
Okay. One last question. Hero or villain? Which would you rather play?
I think I have to say villain.
Yes. That's what
It's
I was
just-
good. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It brings
fun.
its own challenges, but I just think there's kind of more fun to be had.
Love it.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
should do
after
like
this,
a,
I mean, yeah, I think other people
I
are
was
going to
gonna say.
also agree with that after this.
they should do they should have some kind of short on the Blu-ray or DVD release where it's Sofina, but instead of, like, you know, trying to do these like big world shattering things, she simply like collected all the extra D&D D20 popcorn buckets that are like rare now, and she's just like selling them for like huge markup. She's essentially Dwight Schrute with his dolls.
Yes.
But that should
Very
be like a
good.
whole
Oh my
short.
gosh.
It should be an extra.
That would be it.
The ultimate
Epic.
villainy thing, taking advantage of capitalism. You know what I mean?
All right. All right.
I'm in.
On that note, with
I'm there.
that little expression of Matt's agenda, I think we are going to end it there. Daisy Head, thank you for just taking time today. I know you have a busy day. Congratulations
Thank you
on the
so
film.
much.
Congratulations on opening day. And I hope you have a good rest of the day and weekend.
Appreciate it. Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Now that we have fed Matthew's agenda, we had an esteemed guest from Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, with us. Let's get into actually talking about Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, and helping us out today will be one of our comic book experts. Mr. Christian Hoffer is coming on with us. Do we have him? Do we have him? Did we get him? Did we forget Christian?
I'm giving him the Bluey intro.
Oh man,
Christian!
do we?
Real quick, I do want to say while we're waiting for Christian to hop on, if you do want to see even more coverage, we're obviously going to have that interview up on the Comic Book Nation YouTube channel. But if you want to see like every Easter egg, all of the references, all of that, the Character Sheets YouTube page will have like tons of coverage, and they already have tons of coverage. So make sure to definitely go and check that out. I wanted to throw that in there because they have got it covered completely. And
maybe we should take a break, pay some bills.
Yeah,
let's do that real quick.
Yeah, let's take some breaks, pay some bills, and we'll come back. Welcome back to Comic Book Nation, where Matt's apparently in charge. Go ahead, Matt.
What'd I do?
You're in the big box on my screen. We're Comic Book Nation. We're back. We're the only show that does it all for geek culture, the official podcast of comicbook.com. And if you're just joining us now, we just spoke with Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves star Daisy Head. I almost called her Sofina. That's how good she did in that role. And now we are here to actually talk about and review the film with one of our tabletop gaming experts / Pokemon experts / comic book experts. Mr. Christian Hoffer is joining us today. Welcome to Comic Book Nation.
Hello, hello.
So, Christian, we wanted to have you on here especially because we know you are like one of our resident like D&D heads here at Comic Book. Which is saying something because, I mean, we are comic book to begin with. And then to have expertise on top of that means it's serious business. So we wanted to get you on and help us review Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves from two perspectives. I'm a person that never got into D&D. That's not to say I don't have my geek card. I sat in and saw many campaigns. I had an older brother who was a D&D head. I found a lot of the books. He's 10 years older than me. I found the books from the 70s laying around my room all the time. I just never had the focus or patience. I always played a lot of D&D knockoff games, like the ones that were like incorporated a little D&D, a little board, a little more board, all those kind of fun ones. But so I'm kind of coming to this from the perspective of more the average moviegoer. Christian, you're a D&D kind of head, so kind of curious to see where we kind of coalesce on this, because I was in the theater last night, which was fairly packed for a Thursday. It's doing all, I mean, fans are turning out and coming to see this movie. So I know I always like to sit around and listen to the rumbles of what people say afterwards. And I kind of know where this consensus is, but I'm kind of interested to see in our discussion where we land. So Christian, please take it away. What did you think of Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves?
I thought it was a good movie. I'll be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of like traditional blockbuster movies, and D&D very much is a traditional blockbuster, but that doesn't mean it's not bad. I liked it. It reminded me a lot of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is like probably my favorite Marvel movie. And so the first act was a little bit rough, but once it kind of like found its tone and like the characters kind of got through like the kind of stilted introductions, and like they could just do D&D stuff. It was great. So I thought it was really faithful to the Dungeons and Dragons like tone and experience. If you've ever seen the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie, that's like nothing like Dungeons and Dragons. Like, the monsters show up there, but they're not like acting how the monsters are supposed to act and all that stuff. And so compared to that, this movie is great. Like, it's very faithful to the tone and feel of Dungeons and Dragons. So I liked it. I gave it like a 4 out of 5 in our, official comicbook.com review. So what did you think? I'm more curious about what you thought about it.
I think that I'm kind of with you in you kind of echoing what I heard a lot of the D&D gamers say coming out. They were like, okay, like, I feel like D&D gamers are unlike Star Wars gamers in the fact that they can understand like subtleties of and kind of layers of complexity of things. They can walk and chew gum. So they came out, and I heard a lot of them almost all say the same thing. They were like, okay, that was a fun movie. It's not like a heavy D&D soaked movie to the point of like Easter eggs and like everything is so deeply accurate to the game. But I like where I know they made those nods for the average person to like this and become more comfortable and aware of D&D and that whole world. And I liked it for that. And so they seemed pleasantly satisfied with it, which I think is like a good way of saying it. Even though they acknowledge that, it isn't so much, it's kind of lightly playing with D&D lore more so than a deep dive into it. But I think that's what kind of works for it in a weird way. Like Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley did, like, I think Vacation and things like that. And it's a comedy movie. I think they figured out late in the marketing that they had to come out and pretty much, because that last trailer, people was like, this last trailer is kind of weird. And it was just them being like, look, this is a comedy. We don't want to like lead you wrong. Like, this is going to be funny. And so I did like a lot of that. And I kind of like that about the first act, I think, is the first act is pretty much just a comedy riff. It's very little actual D&D. It's mostly just like a comedic riff to get you the tone of the movie and like what to expect. There's all like storytelling and origin stuff, but done in like flashbacks with interruptions and comedic pauses and stuff. This whole gag about this guy named Jonathan and like it's all just a comedy movie. But as Christian says, once it starts and it gets into, and what we're seeing on screen now, the kind of maze game, they showed us two things at Comic-Con, and both I now know were really effective scenes on selling this movie. The first one was the graveyard scene where they're trying to find clues and interrogate people in the graveyard, which had of like Hall H laughing just hysterically because it's a great sequence. And then a small portion of this game sequence when they have to go through the maze, which is like an actual D&D game campaign taking place. And yeah, they did that well at Comic-Con, and it really just translated to why this movie works for me in a larger sense. Like, I think they do a really good job of mimicking what it is to play D&D in a subtle way that you recognize it if you've spent a lot of time on those campaigns. You haven't, it just still functions as a fun movie, and you don't realize you're getting necessarily the expression of what is fun about D&D. And so I think it will, in that way, kind of, subtly help sell the game and expand people to the franchise and maybe open the door for the franchise to do more with itself and more fun with kind of how we can play with D&D, so to speak. So I thought it was a good job, and I thought the cast was really good. I mean, Chris Pine seems like he can just riff his way and make anything good these days. And yeah, he is just fantastic. But him, I would have never picked that. First of all, I would have never picked that. Just placing Chris Pine with like a female foil is like the way to unlock his greatest powers. Like this, Wonder Woman being like the two roles I love him in the most. But I would have never, ever on Earth picked out that him and Michelle Rodriguez would be like such a great pairing. And yet they really are. As like this weird kind of brother-sister thing. You disagree, Christian?
I agree. Did you feel that like Michelle Rodriguez was like riffing on Vin Diesel, like her like stoic barbarian take, like and like the tone that she like delivered a lot of her lines like felt very Vin Diesel-y.
It felt like very like she was doing a riff on Dominic Toretto. I could definitely see that. Yeah. And there's like, but like a more comedic spin on it. Like, she just kind of, it was great. She was just great as that barbarian Holga. And there's a couple great cameos in this and I'm surprised they were able to keep some of this stuff under wraps like for so long that, it was amazing. But It was just, I think in the end, like, it's been a long time since I love, and this is why I do this job, like B movie genre movies. I love. Like, I don't need a big Michael Bay blockbuster so much as I just need like an Equalizer, and that'd be like a really good hour and a half of my life. And this, we haven't had, and I grew up in a lot of like in the 80s, early 90s, fantasy, adventure, huge genre.
Yeah.
Falcon, Lady Bird, whatever you want to get into, but all of this stuff. And so we've been missing that for a while, and I'm happy it's back because this gave me that old school action adventure fantasy movie feel, not too serious like blockbuster, but good B movie fun. And I think we need more of that. So I was all about it.
The practical effects in this movie, that was like one of the things I loved most about it. They didn't like throw in CGI just to throw in CGI. I mean, there was big CGI scenes. But like, so much they use practical effects, like all those zombies and the Speaker Dead scene, all of that was practical. A lot of like they have like a cat person and a bird person, practical effects, not CGI. And I felt that gave the movie like a certain tone and a certain like feel to it that really evoked those 80s movies. Like, I would just see and it was good practical effects. I love good practical effects. That's like my favorite part of the movies is when they do something really cool, but it's they don't like lean on the computer stuff. That's like, I love when they do that, and they found lots of cool ways of doing that in Dungeons and Dragons, which I really appreciated.
Practical. I mean, the opening sequence alone is like at once a very good practical set with a practical effect character who's like a troll or something, and like it's very detailed, like so scarred and gnarly, and all just sets the tone already that like this is going to feel immersive, and this does, because in the age where where I'd say like, and I'm not slamming it, but like Quantumania felt like a bunch of people standing in front of a blue screen.
Yeah,
this felt immersive, like you were in the woods, the world, and all of these fantastical places that we go, even down to this weird underworld place. Also, shout out, I don't think we've said this enough, but he's in it less than I thought. Regé Page is in it less than I thought he would be, but he is gold. I never thought that Regé Page would be this funny, like as he is in this movie. But him as this very kind of unironic, straightforward, he's like the Drax character in this movie, like as just an unironic, straightforward, super serious like character. And there's even just one scene of him just trying to walk somewhere that they turn into like comedic gold, and it's just. He's funny, man. Like, so shout out to him. But everybody's in this. And and like John Wick, they do some great sequences in this movie. That's all I'll say to finish up. There's some fun stuff that I'd even think we'd get in something like there's a whole thing with a shapeshifter and a whole chase sequence with that, which is pretty good and pretty novel. And I was just like, oh, that's fun. And so Dungeons and Dragons definitely keeps your attention. I didn't know if it'd get buried by John Wick, but either of these are very good movies to go see right now. For completely different reasons.
Oh, yeah.
And completely different flavors, but I would go see both if you got matinee time. So, that was our review of Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. I think me and Christian, casual guy, gaming, D&D head, both would say go out and see it. Maybe take some friends, get a party together, roll about which theater you're going to, and then head out there on your quest and have a good time. All right. Matt and Janelle, I know you've rested your vocal cords for a while. Christian, I want to thank you for coming on and helping us out with this. You can always find Christian's work on comicbook.com. Comicbook.com, do you want to plug? Where are your main channels you want to plug? And your podcast as well.
There's I'm on the Pokemon podcast every Monday, so you can listen to a wild podcast has appeared. And we have a D&D YouTube channel. Comic Book has a D&D YouTube channel. It's called The Character Sheet. So go and follow that. We cover the movie, we cover the game, we cover lots of related stuff. It's not just D&D. We do a lot of tabletop RPG stuff, and fantasy stuff too. So videos just about every day.
And that's Christian and our producer Peter, who's also our the comic book account who you guys see in the chat. So be sure to check that out. Because sorry, I'm all over the place here. The Character Sheet, Christian's work, everything D&D. Thanks again, Christian, for stopping by and helping us out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Catch you later, man.
All right, Janelle and Matt, time to start earning your dollars for this because you guys have been quiet for statistically longer than we should be paying before. All right, Matt, you're up. You got to do a bit of talking now because we had a big upset in the gaming world this week. It's one that we saw coming, but it still feels weird now that it's here. That sounds ominous. So, Matt,
Yeah,
save us.
yeah, E3, some clarity has come out since then. So the initial kind of statement from the ESA was that E3 was going to be canceled this year.
No.
Reed Pop,
Crazy.
who took over E3 for this kind of relaunch, was going, release a statement essentially saying like there wasn't enough interest. Essentially, there wasn't enough interest. They had already established some partnerships and things for people to come and present, but overall they just couldn't quite get it all together, and they couldn't get enough people together to really make it the event it needed to be. E3 was at one point the Comic-Con of gaming, right? It was the biggest event. It was where you got all the news. If you tuned into one event for gaming throughout the entire year, it was E3. And then over, the pandemic changed a lot of things. And then also there's been competition in the space. Jeff Keighley's got a number of shows and things like that have kind of started to also kind of eat away. And then the Nintendo Directs and the Microsoft, all of a sudden the companies started doing their own presentations throughout the entire year, and they weren't even at E3 technically, they were just near it. So a lot of things have kind of eaten away at what E3 used to be, and it was always going to be a challenge to do it here, and it looks like for this year it's not going to happen. That said, people were kind of under the impression that like they wouldn't be working on future events. Since then, it has come again that they will work on future E3 events. So this doesn't necessarily mean we won't see an E3 in 2024. However, that isn't necessarily the most likely. So we really could be seeing, a big change in the guard in this. And it's been coming for a while, but this is still a huge deal that it's not going to be around this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, I'm not as heavy into the gaming world, so this doesn't hit me as bad. My question from this is, do you think Comic-Con is far behind?
Um,
Because aren't these the
I
same
think
symptoms
Comic-Con
that seem to be
has-
strangling Comic-Con?
to a lesser degree. The gaming space, like you have the various film companies doing their own presentations throughout the year. You have television doing its own, all the upfronts, all that stuff. But we've had that for years, and that hasn't seemed to eat away at that, because right now there's still a benefit to making a big presence at Comic-Con. Like there's still a benefit. The fervor around fans and the way fans get into that is different. E3 was actually a press thing. It was a media event. And only over the years to just adjust things have they made it more fans, and then that didn't really work. And so it was never supposed to be Comic-Con. It was always supposed to be media and getting the message out there. And then when companies discovered that they don't have to necessarily have a big giant presence at a physical place to do that, and they get some of the same results, that changed. Comic-Con is so tied to fans. I think it fares much better in that regard.
Yeah, I think
That said,
Damon Streams
you
already
will have
saved
some.
you in here. Damon Streams broke down a whole diagram of everything while you were explaining all that, and he was like, "Nah, man, cosplay competitions, meeting creators,
Right.
signing books,
Yeah,
picking up merch, like all of that." I mean, yes.
But that's
Now
because
we
of the
did
fans.
see
Like,
that
they're
a couple
completely
years
different events.
ago. Yeah, we did see some of that a couple years ago, because I remember a couple years, I forget exactly which one, but there was a year, maybe 2016, 2017, where Comic-Con began to like be less of a media event and went back to like the big media companies backed off a little bit, and it was more, let's get back to the root of Comic-Con and do it, for the comics. And that was a little bit of a different feel that year, but I'm just curious. But we're going to keep an eye on it. E3, RIP, rest in power. You had a good run. People in the comments are saying this was so big. We used to all just clear our schedules and sit down for the televised stage shows every day for each system.
Yeah.
And it's just
I
like,
used to
man,
take my
that was a good
lunch.
time.
Yeah, I used to take my lunch around PlayStation reveals, like when they would have their presentation, or when like a company like Insomniac, or they would have their big presentation, Square Enix, when they would have their presentations, I would literally stick around and like on my lunch break and just watch it on my phone or watch it on a computer. Like I was tied in. That's where you got the news. And now
Yeah.
that just doesn't, Sony,
Yeah. It was
Microsoft, they
so
have like
hyped.
10 events a year.
Yeah, it
And
was
they're
so
20
hyped just
minutes.
to sit down and see like the preview of the next gen or the next string of games. So we're gonna miss you, E3. All right, moving right along. Let's catch up with some TV before we get to our comics. The Mandalorian. I mean, we can just say quick. Star Trek: Picard. I'm still enjoying, but I mean, this week was just kind of a smaller episode. We're getting into the development of the season. But again, as we're here stomping for all things Paramount, I mean, Paramount's doing really well this year. I mean, I know we work for them and all, but between Scream 6, Dungeons and Dragons, Star Trek Picard, these things have all been hits, man.
Mhm.
And Showtime and Yellow Jackets is back. I can't wait to watch the second episode of season 2. So Yellow Jackets is also in that Paramount family. We're doing good this year in terms of entertainment. So if you haven't gotten that Paramount Plus subscription, I don't know if we're still on there a lot, but we'll still say go get it. Yeah, that helps us. I think all goes to the same bucket, right? So yeah,
Hey, we're
Paramount
Mixable, man.
Movies,
You can
Paramount
always
Plus,
watch us on
doing good.
Mixable.
Oh yeah. All right. So the Mandalorian. No, let's talk about the Mandalorian. Mandalorian is trying to force me to eat a little crow this week, coming in with a hot episode from season 3 that got me a little bit hyped, got me a little bit up in my seat at 2 a.m. and was like, okay, now we're cooking. We had a lot that went down in this episode. Big battle scene, which I loved. Seeing a bunch of Mandalorians in live action kick some ass was great. I mean, we got that in the first season, but obviously this time around it was bigger and better. And yeah, it was an aerial dog fight, a street fight, jetpacks, the whole 9 yards. So that was great stuff. We got some significant lore development with kind of Bo-Katan and the armors, possibly little crush on each other. We don't know what's going on under those helmets. We know they can't stop the heat, but they kind of came together, no pause, but just figured out that there's different ways to do this Mandalore thing. And Bo-Katan's looking like the new Messiah, and we get a Katie Sackhoff no helmet, which I always prefer. And also we got the tease that Moff Gideon's coming back. Oh, and for deep cut lore, my boy Zeb. I can't believe Richard's not here this week. We got Zeb from Star Wars Rebels making his appearance. This is pretty much all the Rebels characters. Freddie Prinze Jr. told us recently, if you want to go read that comic book Star Wars article, that he's done with Kanan Jarrus. I'm like, Freddie, you might not want to say that right now because everybody's going live action. The entire Rebels crew is now live action except for Kanan, and we can still get that flashback with Freddie Prinze Jr. in there. So, you might not want to, Freddie Prinze may not want to be saying that, but I love this episode of Mando. I thought it was good. I thought it was up to the standards that I've kind of had since post Andor and, previous Mandalorian seasons. And I think it opened the door to really exciting new things in the back and a good story that feels like it now has a point in the back half of the season, right? Is Moff Gideon, was he sprung by other bad Mandalorians out there? Is this a frame job? Like either way, that's interesting. So I'm interested on what you guys thought.
Janelle?
I mean, this is where me not being a super fan and not quite remembering or knowing all of these things. Like I watched Moff Gideon one time. Like I don't know a lot about it. So this is where I'm starting to feel like, oh no, I wish I knew a little bit more about Star Wars to make this all make a little bit more sense. But the drama's there. The excitement's there. I'm curious. I want to know what's happening. And I'm like kicking myself for not having a better grasp of the larger Star Wars universe, I guess. But I love this episode. So yeah.
This franchise is never going to heal. This
I
franchise will never
agree.
heal.
I agree. I really like this show. I think Kofi said it really well. Pointing out there's a lot of different threads being pulled out here, and I enjoy that. And I think they're going to build off those really well moving forward. I thought this episode did a really good job of blending that all together. My only issues with the show are ever when it is typically how it puts an episode together. Sometimes it can feel very blocky. It's here's this section. All right, here's this section. And it's abruptly cut to the next thing. And
you can see those A, B, Like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Yeah.
It's like it just feels like, oh, this is our drama part. Okay, this is our thing. Like sometimes it's just a little blocky and clunky is like how it overall is laid out. But I like all the pieces and I like them all together. So by the end, it's like, who cares, right? But I like that. But I thought they did that really well here. And yeah, man, I love this. I think they're doing some cool stuff. And this as someone who is not as steeped in Star Wars as like Kofi. I will say this has been really cool to see some of these characters I was never like a huge Bo-Katan person, right? Not because of anything I dislike the character or anything, just because like my knowledge of her only goes so far. Like I have a ceiling as far as like how much I know. And this show has really like opened my eyes to that character. And so I like that they're bringing all these other characters in that maybe I don't have the most knowledge of, and giving them a platform and a spotlight. So I'm excited.
All right, yeah. And Chris Chipperson has said in our Twitch comments here that one theory is that it was Sabine Wren who sprung Moff Gideon from that ship with Ahsoka Tano as possibly to help find Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is kind of what the Ahsoka series is setting up. So we know Star Wars TV does like to do that backdoor pilot move. So I wouldn't be surprised if next week I wake up 2 a.m. and I start kind of murking out because they show me all of the Star Wars rebels that are going to be in Ahsoka kind of gathering up as Din Djarin or, Captain, what's his name? I can never hold this guy's name, the X-Wing pilot's name. Captain, I've looked it up 40 times this week, and I can never hold his name in my head. Stupid Star Wars names. But like him tracking them down and the misunderstanding with Din and how Sabine Wren ties into the whole reuniting Mandalore, because her and Bo-Katan got tight like at the end of Rebels, like they became buddies. So that's all going to be interesting if it is kind of a backdoor way of getting the Rebels into live action before and launching what happens in Ahsoka later. So I'm hoping against hope that's what we getting, because I don't want to get up at 2 a.m. for nothing. All right. So that's The Mandalorian. Matt, why don't you take us over into the comic section?
Yeah, so we got some it's a fun lineup today. It's a lot of DC, but the Marvel that is here, I'm very excited about. So let's start with Unstoppable Doom Patrol number 1. Now, if I remember correctly, Janelle, you were the one who loved. Did you like the Doom Patrol show?
Yes.
You were always on me to like watch to get caught up and stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So
love Doom Patrol.
So this one is kind of a new, it's dealing with some of the Dawn of DC stuff that's been set up, but this is very much a launching point for this kind of new team mission, so to speak, which I really like. So like the parts of the issue that really work for me are the fact that, yes, you get the normal kind of zaniness that this team has such a unique makeup and power set that it's just action scenes that would typically be like punch, kick are just so unique and different, and they're fun. They're just, Negative Man alone, it's just so fun to see what they can come up with. And there's a new team member in Beast Girl, and also another team member that gets introduced, and I'm blanking on his name, but he's kind of a big part of the issue in getting to know his power set. But the coolest thing about it is that number 1, Jane is chief, which I love that we're kind of evolving the team that way. But 2 is that the team itself is all about metahumans and actually like really sticking close to that. So like there's this awesome exchange and explanation about that, of like how the Justice League is like, yeah, you think of them as metahumans sometimes, but they're really not, because there's like one on the team. Everybody else is either an alien or from, like a god or made of clay, right? Like everyone has these big things. And so, or human, and they're not really that. So their task is really to like take care of metahumans, find them. It's very much like an X-Men mutant kind type of vibe. And I dig it. And I just always find sometimes like Doom Patrol and teams like this can get lost in everything because they don't have a very distinct and strict purpose. And sometimes things can get muddy. And so this does that for me. It kind of defines what they're doing right now, what their role in this world is. and how it branches into the greater DCU is also great because we don't really get to see Doom Patrol do that as much in the comics. So I really came away liking this issue. I've never been the biggest Doom Patrol person. So I'm curious, Janelle, you are a bigger Doom Patrol fan than me. So how did you feel about this?
Well, I am a big Doom Patrol, wow, Janelle, fan, like on the screen. So this was actually my first ever Doom Patrol comic, and I was not disappointed at all. It's such a unique experience to go back and read books, like to read them in comic form after having like gotten to know them so well in the TV show and feel like, wow, they did such a good job. Like in the show, they did such a good job of capturing these characters. I picked up with them like I missed nothing. Like I was like, oh yeah, these are my people. I know exactly. I know all their backstories. I know their hangups. I know their quirks. Like, and that felt so good as a reader. And, honestly, as someone who is more heavy on like the big screen consumption of comic book content. So that felt great. I thought this book was really awesome. And I did get those X-Men vibes. And I loved that. And I loved the way that they kind of like came back at Batman and they're like, no. Like, stop locking up everyone. Like, we need to give people a chance to do better. And it just felt kind of relevant for times right now. And I just really, really liked it. It's easy to follow. It's digestible. It's cute. It's fun. It's serious. It's a good book. It's just good. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Kofi, what'd you think?
I think that I'm trying to remember who's the guy who did like Punisher, Welcome Back, Frank, and Garth Ennis. This has a a lighter Garth Ennis feel to it.
Oh,
that with an X-Men vibe, like not as crazy and explicit as Garth Ennis obviously likes to get in his work,
right.
But that kind of weird vibe to it. Like Garth Ennis does a good job of kind of going in and taking comic book lore that we know and shaking it up and just making it feel like a little bit more offbeat and weird than it was. And this is what this kind of feels like. We've seen Doom Patrol, who is like DC's resident weirdos, right? But like Matt was kind of saying earlier, they can get lost because they don't have like a core mythos to them that is such a strong through line that it can carry them through all the creative changes that a comic book goes through. You can easily lose like the Doom Patrol you thought you had and get this whole other one and get this whole other one. They're kind of like Animal Man in that respect, who has been like done a couple different ways very differently. But I like where this is starting. We harp on issue ones in here a lot about, the make or break nature of them. But this was good because it was like an action scene, but it also is a lot of conversation happening. And it's establishing that weird world that Doom Patrol is now trying to kind of almost like take a more active role in determining their own weirdness and like where they belong and what they're supposed to be doing. And that's a nice change to see for the book because they're just, especially after the TV show where everybody's so lost and tormented and like all over the place. Seeing a more confident and focused Doom Patrol is interesting, and seeing them how they're in, like Janelle said, how they kind of bring in somebody like Batman and bringing the biggest heavy hitter into this first book and being like, and them having kind of establishing how they are going to be very different from that side of DC is a nice little move. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think Jade makes such a great case for like why Batman isn't effective at times. It's like no one goes to Arkham. Like she's like Arkham, he'll get out in like no time, and that's not exactly what they need, right? So it's a whole spiel about that night, and I loved it. And then moving into a book that we've been kind of keeping up with is Action Comics. Action Comics 1053. This one, again, we've been following this, and then obviously Superman #1 launched, and those have become very much like sister books. And this one does make references to that series and Supercore and things like that. And it's good about noting that. But I like that for a minute there, it seemed like they were going to intertwine more with Lex, like being a critical part of Metallo and stuff. And I like that now we're getting that separated. It's easier for me now to like sort out what is in one and what the other is tackling, because now they're actually becoming two distinct things. We have this other force, and it's not Lex. And so I think that's important, because I really like what Action Comics is doing. But that was like my only little nitpick, was like sometimes the line is blurred a little bit. And here I think we get separation, and I'm enjoying it. Also, I gotta say, like the stuff with Jonathan in this book, the family, the Superman family stuff, is just fantastic. It's just so nice to see that with the Superman side of things. And like the whole conversation he has with, you know, with the kids, and how it's like, no, I lost stuff. There's a whole conversation he has that is like so mature, especially even for all the things Jonathan's gone through. You know, he's still young, right? And so it's just a really, I don't know, there's a whole great setup there that is just wonderful. So I really enjoyed that. Seeing that with Action and what they're doing. And, you know, the action scenes are cool too. There's also obviously the two backup stories, which we can get into. And I love those as well for very different reasons. So overall, I think Action is doing a lot for one issue at a time. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet. I just love how this book is balancing. I've said it again and again. Like, we never really had Superman and all these other characters around him kind of brought together as a family before. And I'm loving it. And I really do love like kind of what it is. And it's a definite counter to like the Bat family, for instance, and their issues. But I like seeing them do this. And I like how Action Comics is reusing these familiar characters in new and interesting ways. Like, we've seen Metallo 1,000 times. We've seen Metallo and Luthor 1,000 times, but it really works here. And even in opening, and what you can do with this book by spreading it around to more than just Kal-El Superman is great. Like John Henry Irons in the opening of this book, there's a great scene there where, and it's also, when it's not Superman, it weirdly makes you feel stakes. Like, some of these people could die. Even so, you don't have to just rely on like, oh, it's Superman, I know nothing's going to happen. In that opening, you're like, would they fridge John Henry Irons? Like, will they do that? And like, and it's like, oh no, he makes it, but you never know. It keeps enough tension and suspense there to kind of keep you going. The only regrettable thing about this is the variant cover with Shazam. Sorry.
Okay, I didn't like that cover either.
I don't even understand what that was. Like, those.
I don't think the artist liked Zachary Levi, because they made him look like the most douchey Shazam I think I've ever seen in my life. But
Chanel, what you think?
I mean, yeah, we'll keep it short here. Same. I love the family aspect. I'm getting to know some of these characters and really enjoying that. And, you know, seeing vulnerabilities more than normal with any kind of Superman stuff makes me feel nice, because it makes them more relatable. It feels like there's a lot of vulnerability. And, you know, when you have people you love, like, that makes you more vulnerable, right? So I do like seeing that whole family unit. And I am, you know, I don't think like a ton of stuff happened in it, but I'm ready to see where it goes from here.
Yeah,
like,
it was
there's
one
no
heck of a cliffhanger.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And then moving into something completely different over on the Marvel side, everyone knows I love Jeff the Land Shark.
Matt's agenda to close out the show.
He's a delightful character.
Beginning and close out the show.
By the way, I will just say, I did not make everyone read this. I was like, I'm sorry, this is optional.
Oh, I read this for sure.
So this is a collection of the kind of small comics that have been releasing on Marvel Unlimited. And actually, if you like this, the second volume is already started on Marvel Unlimited. So you can actually get new ones there. But they collected all the first season into one book. And this is just Kelly Thompson and I don't ever want to butcher his name. So Girihiru. I hope I said that right. I probably didn't. I apologize if I did not. But amazing artwork. Like, they're just fun little skits. There's no dialogue. And you have like stuff like Jeff stealing Cap's shield.
Immediate
to
question.
Sled. Yes.
Before this scrolls too far, why is Squirrel Girl thick in this?
I mean, it's just the art style. I think. I think it's just the art style.
Okay.
I don't think there's a particular reason. But and then there's like one of my favorite ones is Jeff, like he's actually in the bath but he's like doing this whole adventure, and Kate's trying to give him a bath. They're funny. They're just funny, light, and Damon Streams can attest to this. He's been saying it as well. This is like just printing money if Marvel ever puts him in the MCU. Okay, this is Groot level territory here. All right, so like he's been around for a minute. He's awesome. They should absolutely make him and put him in there. He will print money. So yeah, I enjoyed this. I definitely think you should check it out if you're in for a good time. It is not necessary reading, but I enjoyed it. Janelle, you read it, so what did you think?
It's so adorable. I love him so much more than Grogu. Like
Wow.
I love Jeff. I love him so much. It makes me snuggle my puppy, and it's also clever. Like there's little clever moments, and I love the art style. I love the way these characters are drawn, especially Hulk. Like Hulk is adorable. Like it's just this is just so darn cute. But it's not really, I would say it's not even a read, it's a look at.
For sure. Yeah.
Like it's a look
there's
at.
literally no dialogue. Yeah.
But it's
Little
so
looky-loo.
clever and cute and like it just makes you smile. It's like I don't know, I'm trying to compare it to a TV show that you have to watch when you're not having a good day or something. It just makes you happy to be alive.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, that is the best description. And I would say, Brywood, I know I would say yes. For me, it's worth it.
No, stop doing this to people.
It's for me.
People work for their
it's worth
money.
it. Yeah, I do too, and it's worth it for me. It's worth it. But here's the thing: I don't have Marvel Unlimited either. This is a Marvel Unlimited thing that releases free as part of their service. If you already have it, then obviously no. I don't think it's worth it to get a physical version of it. Absolutely not. But if you don't have that, which I don't, then that's the only place you can see it. So collecting, it's like they collect. It's not like 4 comics they collect in here. They collect a good amount. I'm worth it. But I also hang issues on my walls purely for the cover. So I'm a particular side of that equation. I will not fault anyone for going that's too expensive. Also, I did see it in the comments. I think it might have been Damon. Yes, Something is Killing the Children number 30 came out. That issue is fantastic. The Cutter storyline they've been doing in that, I cannot wait for this to get adapted. Like I'm so excited for the series because
Nobody
I
saw it,
see
but when
like
Daisy Head was here, I said she'd be perfect in that. I was like,
you
she'd be
did
great for
say that. You did say that. I saw that. So yeah, so
All
that's
right.
comics.
All right, that's it for our show today. Thank you for joining us. We are Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. If you're just getting into the show now, please go on YouTube and subscribe to Comic Book Nation YouTube, where we have all of our shows you can rewatch. Plus, we always have Bonus Round, our bonus content that we put on our YouTube page exclusively. And this week, Matt, what do we have? Something special already out there for fans?
Yeah, me and Connor, it is, if you don't know, it is Wrestlemania weekend. So literally starting today, there is like deluge of there's the Hall of Fame, there's the SmackDown, there's Ring of Honor has a show. There's also, of course, WrestleMania day 1 and day 2 on Saturday and Sunday. There's NXT Stand and Deliver. Like there's so much happening. WrestleCon is happening. Like there's so much happening over this weekend. And so me and Connor go and give you a full preview of what to expect, some predictions, some things to look out for about the future. It's all up there right now.
Also, I promised you some love and some quick mentions. Also, the Bad Batch is out there. I know we haven't gotten time to break down Bad Batch season 2. We don't usually get enough time to do that kind of level of stuff. These guys don't watch Star Wars animation anyway. But yes, Bad Batch season 2 was hyped. I liked it more than I liked Mandalorian season 3 so far. But that 2-part finale was great, and I can't wait to get another installment of this show. I really do like this story about Clone Force 99 and all the deep, dark stories about what happened to the clones after the Empire took over, which is what this show is really kind of examining. And it's pretty nuts, man. Some of these episodes are really heavy. Also, I just binged through the Showtime show, since we're promoting Paramount stuff, Your Honor, with the Bryan Cranston, that show where he plays a judge that gets into something. I know I'm late on that, but that show is excellent. And there's a whole storyline about a man named Kofi Jones. And so I heard my name more in one TV show than I ever have, and it was bugged out. Especially what happens to that guy. But anyway, check all of that out. It's all on streaming this weekend. Yellow Jackets, Picard, Your Honor, and what's the other thing I just finished mentioning? And The Bad Batch. So you can live it up this weekend, even if you're not out seeing Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Also, pick up some comics, read that, and check out everything on the Comic Book Nation YouTube page, which is what I was trying to promote. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Kofi Outlaw.
Matt Aguilar, CB.
And I'm at Janelle Wheeler.
Thank you guys for joining us. This is Comic Book Nation. We'll see you over on YouTube. Peace.
Bye, guys.